Well, good morning, everyone. Here we are again on our Tuesday live stream inside the Gut Solution, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So good morning to all of you, and those of you on the East Coast, good afternoon. I'm Marl Salerno, the Gutsy Health Coach. I'm really excited for you all to be here. Today, we're going to be doing some Gut Health 101, little anatomy, specifically about the small intestine. So we're going to do a little bit of anatomy so that you guys can get education for empowerment to help you overcome your chronic digestive condition. Because if you know how your gut works, then you can figure out what to do about it. Okay, so I'm really looking forward to sharing this with you. It's one of my favorite or absolute favorite things to talk about when it comes to gut health, because I think it's always super eye-opening for everyone to truly understand. Quick housekeeping. In the top of the Gut Solution page where there's like all the little icon labels there's one that's labeled guides. And in there, I basically organize all the resources of this page, some really good nugget videos in there. So it's a great place to go that's easy access and well organized, so that you guys can really utilize the information that's here on the page. And I also want to encourage all of you, if you're new to the group or you've been in the group for some weeks now, share on here. You will get out of the group what you put into it. So if you want to share your story, you want to ask questions, etc., please do so. And also watch all these awesome live streams that I put together for you guys. And if there's anything in particular that you want to hear me talk about, then let me know. Comment in this video, comment in any of the videos, and I will see your requests and I will do my best to fulfill them, okay? Because I want you guys to get high value out of the content in here. I don't want it to be a waste of time, okay? Because God knows many of us don't have a lot of time these days. So we don't want anything to be a waste of time. We want it to be worth your while to be in this group. Let me see here. I think those were the housekeeping items. And for those of you who don't know me, again, my name is Maro Salerno, and I am a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. And my quick story is that I struggled with constipation and gas for pretty much most of my life, unfortunately. And then once I had my children, I added bloating onto that list. And I had been in the health and wellness space for a very, very long time, about 20 years or so before I found functional medicine. And I thought I was doing all the right things. I was eating organic foods and, yoga and massage and doing a lot of great nervous system work and just trying to make good decisions and not put toxins in my body and not be exposed to toxins and detoxing and all that kind of stuff. And I was still struggling with chronic digestive conditions. So I thought, this is the way life is going to be for me. And this is as good as it gets, and that these symptoms are normal. Well, when I found functional medicine, it completely got rid of my constipation, my gas, and my bloating, but it really changed my life because I began to really understand, how do we figure out what are the underlying causes of our chronic digestive conditions or health issues in general? And understanding that was just so eye-opening and inspiring that I wanted to share it with others. So here I am today doing just that. And I've been practicing for several years now. And I've helped people through the gamut of autoimmune disease, infertility, obviously chronic digestive conditions, even cancer. So I have been gaining a wealth of experience over these last 4 years. And one of the common themes that I see in all of my clients is that if you don't get the gut right, the gut is the foundation of all health. It's hard to get anything else right in the body to get health to be optimal. And so that's why I'm here. And I want to educate you guys, because education is empowerment. And so I help people just like you overcome their chronic digestive conditions using a functional approach. So whether it's constipation or diarrhea or gas or bloating or SIBO or acid reflux, whatever, I help you approach it through natural and holistic therapies and lots of love, because you need love if you want to get better. And yeah, finding a ton of success. And you see a lot of client success stories here on the page and in the group, and you will see more as time goes on. Okay. So for those of you who are here with me live or watching on the replay, please say hi. Let me know that you can hear me. And let me know what chronic digestive condition you are struggling with and how long you've been struggling with it for. This is a safe and loving space. So please do tell. I love to gauge how everyone's doing and what is going on in their health. And while you guys put that in, I am going to get things set up here. Okay. All right. So let's get started. And by the way, if you have any questions as we're going through this, I'm going to be in PowerPoint. So it's hard for me to see the comments here on Facebook, but I do have my phone. So I'm hoping I can flag any questions that come up. And if you're watching on the replay, please do put your comments in, and I'll be sure to answer them as you place them in there and get back to you. Let's see. All right, good. All right, we've got our comments so I can see them in here. All right. I am going to share my screen with you all. And all right, let's see if I can move myself up here in this top right corner. All right, so again, today we're going to be talking about kind of gut health 101. This is your gut education, particularly about the small intestine, because there's a ton of action that happens there, and understanding what its responsibility is, what is it supposed to do, what happens when it's not working right, and why that really contributes to chronic digestive conditions. Okay, so I wanted to start with you guys by sharing with you that common symptoms are not normal. I think you know that because you're here in this group, but I think, like I was sharing with you my story, it's like you become accustomed and you normalize things. It's like a normalizing bias where you look around you and it's like, well, everybody's got gas, right? Everyone's kind of constipated, or everyone's running to the toilet, or oh, everyone gets reflux after they eat that spicy food. No, common symptoms are not normal. Okay, so I want you to use that as a background as we go through this, because it begins to set the stage for deep, true understanding of where chronic digestive conditions kind of are rooted at, and why many of your other symptoms that may not seem gut related are probably gut related, even though the location is different in your body. Now, I'm sure many of you, if you've been looking around in the gut and the health and wellness space, you've probably heard of Hippocrates. He always gets quoted because he's so dang old. And I mean that in a loving way, like from so long ago. And he's the one who said that all disease begins in the gut. And I really, truly do believe that. I think that pretty much most disease really does begin in the gut. It's got such a connection highway to so many systems in our body that it's hard to really deny that. Now, we know that we eat and that we then poop, right? But what happens in between all of that? Well, our bodies break down the food, but it's not just our bodies alone that do that. It's also something called our microbiome, or bacteria in our body. So there are estimated to be about 100 trillion bacteria compared to the 10 trillion cells that make up the body. And in our body, microbes outnumber human cells 10 to 1. So this makes up anywhere from 3 to 6 pounds of weight within a person. Isn't that amazing? I think that's totally amazing, blows my mind. And the vast majority of these bacteria are beneficial, and they help metabolize food particles and form highly absorbable nutrients for the person to digest. So these bacteria are referred to as our microbiome, and they really do play a huge crucial role in our lives. And scientists are really starting to really just discover them, honestly, even though they've been on the radar, and they're saying that they don't even really understand, but how much these bacteria make up what it means to be human. So these microbes, they make up an ecosystem that's designed to be symbiotic, meaning that it's beneficial for us and the microbes to live together. And a rise in pathogenic microbes, meaning bad bacteria, for example, can cause chronic gut inflammation, damage to the gut lining, which we don't want. And we're going to talk about how that happens here in a minute. But when this happens, it causes something that's called intestinal permeability or leaky gut. So I don't know how many of you have heard of leaky gut. Maybe drop that in the comments down below. Let me know if you've heard of this term, leaky gut. And I love this illustration. It says leaky gut, and this guy on the left, he's like, dude, like, what's going on with you? And this other guy goes, oh yeah, it's just my leaky gut, like no big deal. Common symptoms are normal, right? So we have to get out of that mindset. Common symptoms are not normal. And it's just giving us a little bit of humor. And I want to give you some hope as well as we talk through this. It's not all doom and gloom. So just because I explained to you what's going on and how this has contributed to your chronic digestive condition, not only is there just hope, which is a beautiful emotion itself, but there's hope with actual actionable items that you can take to benefit your chronic digestive condition and overcome leaky gut, okay? Now, this is where we start getting to a little bit of our anatomy 101. Let me just pull me over here. So this is what we call the mucosal barrier, okay? And also known as the small intestine. And sometimes I use language like the gut. And a lot of times when you hear me referring to the gut, I'm really referring to the mucosal barrier or the small intestine. So I apologize if that ever seems confusing to any of you. But the digestive system basically begins here in the mouth, right? So it goes from the mouth and it goes down the esophagus. And then it is here that it lands, and it's in between really the stomach and the large intestine is the small intestine, okay? And it can run anywhere between 18 to 20 feet long, depending on the person. And if you're a child, if you're an older adult, you know, the size can be differential, as well as genetics can play a factor into that. So I have heard that the small intestine can run even like 30 feet, 35 feet long, but in general, 18 to 21 feet or so, depending, okay? But it just tells you like how dang long this thing is. Like, can you imagine? That's like taller than I am. Now, when you take the small intestine and kind of pull it out, this is kind of what it looks like. It looks like a tube, right? And there's a circle here. And you can see these like little rivets or these little ridges on the inside edge of this tube. This is all the small intestine. Now, if we were to pull out one of those ridges or flower petals, this is what you would see here, okay? And this is what we call an enterocyte. So now we're going to take this flower petal and we're going to go to the next image. So here is the flower petal. Okay, these are all these flower petals. And if we were to connect this end all the way to this end, it would create a tube-like circle. Okay, and that would be what you would see the small intestine. Now, each of these enterocytes are held together by something that's called tight junctions. You can imagine it like concrete. And that's what holds these enterocytes together. And then there's also something called villi and microvilli that are up here on the top, and they're these like finger-like projections, and they're supposed to flow freely And basically what they do is they help to absorb nutrients into the body. And up here, you'll see that, there's like some enzymes and whatnot that are helping to digest food, etc. Okay. And so we want to see food basically being absorbed and our body being nourished. Now, the mucosal barrier is supposed to function in two ways. It's supposed to provide an absolute physical barrier between the environment and us, because this mucosal barrier runs from the mouth to the anus, so it really is an inside-out barrier, right? And it's also where 90% of nutrient absorption and breakdown occurs. So it's responsible for breaking down and taking what's coming from our macronutrients, which is our proteins, our fats, and our carbohydrates, and breaking those down into micronutrients small enough so that they can be absorbed through the microvilli. Now, nothing should be coming through this barrier that hasn't been broken down into a nice micronutrient size. So anything that is larger can't get through because it's not small enough to absorb. So you can see there are little nutrients. Let me go to this next image. There are little nutrients that are being absorbed and going into the bloodstream. And there are enzymes within the mucosal barrier that are breaking down or transporting these nutrients into the bloodstream. And that's really how it's supposed to work. Now, the mucosal barrier also has something that's called a chemical barrier. And this is basically meaning that we produce about 80, and now some people even are saying, scientists are saying about 90% of our immune system is secreted in our gut. And that's called secretory IgA or SIGA, and it's a very important antibody that supports immune function. And it's important to know that SIGA is suppressed by elevated cortisol levels. Now remember, cortisol is your stress hormone, right? So when you have high stress in the body, whether that's emotional, mental, whether that's because you're in a vicious chronic stress cycle because of a sickness in your body, maybe you've got really bad body aches and pains for a long time, all of those are going to induce a chronic stress response, and that's going to elevate your cortisol levels in your body. And when that happens, it suppresses your immune system, which means you're more vulnerable to colds and sicknesses and the like. And it makes it very difficult for your gut to do its job. Now, here are some triggers that could cause intestinal damage or leaky gut syndrome, okay? So dietary proteins or foods in general, low hydrochloric acid and enzymes, antibiotics, infections, blood sugar issues, antibodies, pregnancy, menopause, toxins, food allergies, and even just mental emotional stress. But all of these are considered stressors. Now, when any one of these are occurring and they're occurring enough of the time, then what happens is the gut lining gets damaged. And literally what begins to happen is those tight junctions, those cement-like pieces that hold the enterocytes together, they break. And when they break, the enterocytes separate. There's literally a space between them. It's imagine like there's a gap between your teeth, right? But this is in the small intestine where this is not supposed to happen. This is supposed to be nice and hooked together to prevent pathogens from coming through, invaders, right? So now you've got this space. And when you've got this space, here's a dietary protein, here's food, okay? And now let's say you love eating beef or fish, or let's just even say you love lettuce or broccoli or avocado, and you eat those things a lot, because you really love them. And let's say one day, like you're in a rush and you're eating and you're not really chewing your food, you're not really breaking it down into a small enough micronutrient size for your small intestine to be able to digest it properly. Well, over time, what happens is you repeat those same foods and you repeat those same ways of not chewing well, and your damaged gut is already, damaged. Well, these proteins, these foods start to plop through the space between your interocytes, and they go down into your bloodstream. And when they hit your bloodstream, your immune system is triggered, and it goes, whoa, what's that? There's an invader. And as I say this to you, you're probably thinking, that's not an invader, that's food. And I'm saying, you're right. It is food, right? And so this shouldn't be happening. But because there's damage to the small intestine, because there's a leaky gut, food is leaking through. And it's triggering the immune system and creating a chronic stress response. Now, this would be a good thing if we're talking about pathogens, because you want your immune system to attack an invader and protect you from getting sick and ill, right? But not with the food. So what happens over time is foods keep plopping in because you love that beef, you love that broccoli, you love that lettuce, you love that fish, whatever, right? And I'm talking about healthy foods. Obviously, unhealthy foods are even going to have more of an activation, but even unhealthy foods, for those of you who have been on this journey for a while, you're like, I'm eating organic, beautiful food, and I have food sensitivities. What gives? Well, this is what gives. Okay, there needs to be healing done to the gut lining to prevent this from happening. So when this happens on enough of a basis, then the immune system starts to tag that particular food or those particular foods with an antibody so that it can recognize it. Now, every time you eat that food, your immune system is putting off an inflammatory response in the body. Now, I don't know about you, but most people eat between 2 to 5 times per day. So that is 2 to 5 times per day that you can be activating the immune system and creating an inflammatory response. And for those of you who have been studying this kind of stuff for a while, you may know the term cytokine response, right? This is where the body is on mass inflammation state at a cellular level, okay? And the body is super irritated. Now, when this happens and the body's super irritated for a long time, the next stage is autoimmunity. So there might be quite a number of you here that are listening to Gut 101, and maybe you've come to this group because of constipation or diarrhea or reflux, but you're also struggling with autoimmune disease. Well, they go together, unfortunately, okay? And that's where, with autoimmunity, that's where the immune system gets so hypersensitive and activated that it can't differentiate between real invaders and its own tissue, and you start getting attacked, or it's attacking itself essentially. And the body is just on fire. The other thing that's really important to know is that these villi and microvilli, they can start to have what's called a blunted brush border. And a blunted brush border is where they get a haircut. So they'll be kind of short. And what that does is it does not allow your body to render the nutrients from your food. And so you'll be struggling with malabsorption and malnutrition, which makes a lot of sense for a lot of you if you're feeling like you're eating really good food and you're not getting better, and you feel tired, you feel exhausted, you feel like your cells aren't working right. Well, yeah, because your cells need nutrition in order to perform their function. So, you know, if you're not breaking it down and it's not working out, well then, yeah, it's not going to happen. I hope this makes sense to all of you. Please comment and let me know if this is making sense to all of you, whether you're live or on the replay. Now, what happens when the gut is not functioning properly? Then the next major organ that's responsible for detoxification takes on the brunt is the liver, okay? So I love to kind of tie this in with working with coworkers. So I'm sure everyone has probably had that experience here in the group, but let's say you've got a job and you're the gut, right? And you're working hard, and then, or I'm sorry, you've got a coworker that's the gut and they're not doing their job properly, right? And next thing you know, you're having to start like taking on their work because they're not getting it done right, they're not getting enough done, etc., right? Well, the liver is not responsible for breaking down food. So like food particles can start to float through, And the liver just starts working on overtime, like it's trying to detox the body. And at the same time, there's like food moving. It's like it becomes very problematic, right? And we start having a lot of issues like skin issues, detoxification issues, sleep issues, and you name it, especially when it comes to the liver. So I don't know, maybe some of you can comment or type below if you also have any sleep issues. And obviously you're here because of chronic digestive conditions, but those can come along like either you're sleeping through the night and you don't feel rested when you wake up, or you're waking up a lot during the evening. And liver hour in Chinese medicine is between 1 and 3 in the morning. So if you're waking up between 1 and 3 on a pretty regular basis, and you know it because you're like looking at the time, you're like, God, what time is it? Why can't I sleep? And every night it's between that hour. Well, that's why. Now, remember these triggers that we were talking about? Well, we're going to get into now pathogens, okay? Because one of those triggers is pathogens or infections. And pathogens are pretty darn sneaky. You know, they're very highly intelligent, and they have figured out how to live in our bodies and make it very difficult for us to get rid of them. Now, there are some bacteria, of course, that we want in our body. And like I said in the beginning, there's a symbiosis that happens between them and us. But there are also harmful pathogens. There are bad bacteria, they're parasites, they're worms, they're funguses, they're mold, and they can wreak major havoc on our bodies. Now, and that major havoc is a triggering event. It's an inflammatory stress response in the body. Let's see. Now, imagine someone like yourself or anyone else who is already struggling with leaky gut because of some things that they've done in their lifetime. So like, let's say you've been eating really processed foods or really toxic or chemical foods. You've been eating fast foods, McDonald's, et cetera, for a long time, or canned foods, et cetera, right? And then you've taken antibiotics, you've had life stress, you know, maybe you've been pregnant at some point and the like, right? Well, your gut's already compromised, and then you get exposed to a pathogen. Well, your body is not going to have the ability to protect you from it because your gut is already leaky. And so you're so much more prone to being exposed to these pathogens. Now, it is possible that a pathogen can cause leaky gut, but it's always hard to say. I would say 9 times out of 10, it's a lot of lifestyle factors that people are unfortunately engaging in before they get exposed to some really critical pathogens, that what brings them down the cycle of a chronic digestive condition. So it's your daily habits, I think, that make the biggest difference. And then when you get exposed to some of these things, it really tips you over the scale. Now, when we're talking about parasites, bacteria, funguses, yeast, and even molds, what's really challenging about them is their intelligence, like I was mentioning before, okay? And so they have something that's called biofilm. And biofilm is like a protective shield that they have. And this protective shield not only allows them to survive and thrive in your body, but it also makes them almost invisible to detection. So if you go in for a conventional stool test at your doctor's office on a yearly basis, oftentimes they're difficult to detect, even though a lot of your symptomology, and if you're struggling with chronic digestive conditions, is signaling towards that. You know, the doctor's kind of like, well, I can't find it, so I don't have anything to give you. Everything looks normal. I don't know what's wrong with you. And you're like, I feel terrible. What gives? So part of that is the biofilm. And so with functional medicine testing, there's biofilm busters that we use before some tests. Other tests don't need us to do that, but it's also the type of testing as well that is important for detection. So using just a typical stool test at the conventional doc often doesn't use triple microscopy screening, which is where they use different types of microscope with different lenses. They also culture the stools and use many different samples to see what they do over a period of time, as well as DNA pathogen testing, where we can actually identify the DNA of a pathogen, making it highly recognizable. And so that's part of it. Now, when we have biofilm in the body, right, and it's difficult to detect, but let's say you finally do detect it. Let's say you go to a conventional doc and they do detect something, then they give you a round of drugs for 4 to 6 weeks to take. Well, that doesn't always take care of the entire life cycle of the pathogen, right? Because it's got eggs and babies, and it's going to go on longer than that 4 to 6 week period. So maybe you got at some of the adults, but you're not getting at the babies that are also living underneath this biofilm. And that drug does not take care of the biofilm. So you're not uncovering everything. Now, the other thing that I think is super fascinating for you to know, and also kind of disturbing, is that biofilm also acts as an information superhighway in the body. It's like the internet network of pathogens. And so what happens is that different pathogens can actually communicate to each other along this biofilm or information superhighway. And that's why we have something that's called primary and secondary pathogens, where there's a primary pathogen, a bigger, literally in size pathogen compared to a smaller one. And I'll give you an example. Something like Giardia would feed something like Candida, and they have this little relationship, right? So if you've ever thought that you've had Candida and you can't seem to get rid of it, probably the culprit is that you have a bigger primary infection that hasn't been detected that needs to be worked on. Do you guys think that's crazy? Comment and let me know. All right, I want to talk about conventional and alternative methods and why many of them don't work, even alternative ones. So there's some of you who are newer to this kind of functional approach. It's considered an alternative approach, and some of you are more seasoned. But wherever you are, conventional methods using all these different drugs that are available. I've heard of doctors telling people to not wear tight clothing because of heartburn. Of course, removing certain foods. Okay, fine, that makes some sense for sure. Just eating fiber like psyllium or bran to help with constipation. Reflexology or abdominal massage, enemas or hydrocolon therapy, naturopathic medicine. And I'm not saying that all of these are bad or anything, but why many of them don't work is because a lot of them are a Band-Aid. They're a Band-Aid and they're not uncovering the true underlying causes of your chronic digestive condition. And so part of this has to do because number one, they're not working long enough, but number two, they're not removing as many of the stressors that are causing your chronic digestive condition and causing this high inflammation in the body. But they're also not working long enough with the removal of those things and then acting positively to rebuild the gut lining and to rebuild the body back from its damaged state. So how well stress is managed in the body determines your health and your resiliency. So when your health is in a really good shape, then you're more resilient. Like you can stay out late and feel great, or you might, try that food that you don't typically eat just that one time and it doesn't bother you. It's not that big of a deal because you've got a lot of resiliency in the body. Some of that is a genetic factor, but a lot of that has to do with the fact of where your body is at right now, and it's got way too many stressors going on that are irritating it. And yeah, it's time to turn those things around. Okay, so before I go here, let me go back for a second. So I want to ask you all a question. So I'm going to list off a bunch of different symptoms, and I want you to kind of tally them off on your fingers, okay? And then we'll go from there. Sound good? Okay, so constipation, gas, diarrhea, bloating, SIBO, constipation to diarrhea, like the two together, acid reflux or GERD, sleep issues, acne, headaches, brain fog, food sensitivities, heartburn. I guess I already did that one, right? Let's see. Oh, allergies, like nasal mucus that comes down a lot, abnormal stools, really smelly stools, bad breath, bad body odor, depression. Okay, so I want you guys to tally those off. Now, how many of you had one of those symptoms? I want you to put one down below if you have one. How many of you had 2 to 4? Put 2 to 4. How many of you had 4 to 6? Put 4 to 6 down below. How many of you had 6 to 8? Put 6 to 8 down below. And how many of you had 8 or more? Put 8 or more down below. Okay, so why that's important is because as your symptoms are building up, it's telling us where you are on the stress scale, right? And probably we'll share with you kind of why you are where you are at with your chronic digestive condition. So here in the middle is where we have no symptoms, right? This is no symptoms. Now, let's say you got a cold or a bad flu, and then it's, you're not feeling all that great. And so you kind of went one click low and you kind of got low energy and fatigue, but then you got better and you bump back up to no symptoms, right? And then like a few weeks later, a couple months later, like a family member dies and you're very close to them and it's very emotionally taxing for you. You're not really getting much sleep and you're having to get ready for the funeral and there's all these things to do and there's all the family interrelationships and dialogue that's going on and you start to feel real tired again. And now, like, you're getting another cold or a flu because you're feeling run down and you haven't been able to take care of yourself. So now you're not going back to no symptoms. You're kind of stuck in low energy. And now, like, oh God, now you're really tired, but, you're also like eating things and it's bugging your stomach and you don't know why not. You've got like diarrhea or some constipation and it's just, things are adding up. And now you're like, every time like you go out to eat, there's like, you can't even go out to eat. And so now you're stuck in this diagnosed condition. So now you go to the doctor and the doctor's like, look, you've got reflux. Look, you've got IBS, you've got IBD. And you're like, okay, well, what can I do about it? Well, just, watch your diet and exercise. And you're like, well, I'm trying to do that. So you go back and you listen or you get on a drug or whatever, and you try to do those things and you can't quite get yourself back to no symptoms. You're kind of like stuck around here. And then eventually it can get so bad, right, that it turns into like autoimmunity and cancers and all kinds of really bad digestive situations that can lead to death. And nobody wants that. I mean, do you guys want that? Comment. I would imagine it's a big no, right? Now, the thing is when you can build your health, build your gut health, obviously resolve your chronic digestive condition, then what happens is you start building. You start adding more nuggets in. That's the resiliency that you're building, so that you actually begin to have not just no symptoms, but you have high energy, you have strong immune function, you have cell protection, and you start getting 100% function. These are the people that you see that you're just like, wow, they're so vital, they have so much energy, like, how do they do it? They're bodies are so strong and they've got this great fitness, etc. Right? So that's what we want for all of us. So you're probably wondering what methods do build gut health and help you overcome your chronic digestive condition. Well, first one, and I've been firing away at this one, but it's removing as many stressors simultaneously and identifying healing opportunities. So that means removing as many items that are stressing out your digestive condition and your entire body as possible for a period of time altogether, and then acting upon the body positively to help rebuild your gut health, right? And identifying those healing opportunities is really critical. And I think I say this often enough, but I think it bears repeating, which is that I think a lot of you do find some things that are stressors that you're removing. You're just not finding enough of them. And part of it just has to do with education and working with a health coach like myself, or a functional medicine doctor that really cares, because I know some functional medicine doctors out there that aren't great, and there's ones that are amazing. So you can't do all of it on your own. So in my gut solution program, what I help you guys do is identify your underlying causes. So it's finding out what stressors are irritating you, and then finding which ones you need to act upon. And I'm basically a health detective. So I ask you a lot of questions, and then we utilize functional lab testing. So that's where test, don't guess comes in. It's not that every test is perfect, but I keep my finger on the pulse of the highest technology when it comes to functional medicine lab testing, instead of just using conventional tests that have been wrote over and over again that don't really produce any great results and don't really help us to find what are some of the stressors that are irritating your body and creating this inflammatory state that's breaking down your gut and causing your chronic digestive condition. And then I use individualized protocols and support. So I analyze all of your information and put together these really amazing individualized protocols, because only you are you, okay? Everybody is always different, whether that's in micro differences or big differences, right? And so you need to be supported in that unique way so that you can have success. So that is my gut solution program. And that is really kind of the anatomy 101 of how our guts function and what causes leaky gut, which is a big part of what causes your chronic digestive conditions. So I hope this was helpful. Please comment. Let me know if this was eye-opening for you. Did you learn something new? What was that thing that you learned? Please do share, whether you're live or watching on the replay. I love to hear. And let me grab something while you guys put your comments in. And that is this. So if you've been watching my live streams, if you have been struggling with chronic digestive conditions, you're willing and able to invest in your health, if you're coachable and you're really ready to overcome your chronic digestive condition, then you can set up a qualifying call with me. I'm going to drop that here in the comments. And you can schedule a qualifying call with me, but please, make sure that you've been here and that you're truly ready, because it does take a commitment for sure. I hope this was informative for you all. I love being on here. I love this group. I want to see all of you overcome your chronic digestive condition. And if you need my help, then please reach out. And again, please utilize this group as a supportive platform to help yourself. All right. I'll see you guys next week, Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And until then, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and your week. Bye.